Hey, what's up YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at Sekiro Shadow Die Twice for the PlayStation 4, also available on the Xbox One and PC via Steam. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link in the description of this video. I'm sorry if I didn't get a review, did my review on this earlier. A couple of things kind of popped up and then kind of became sort of a it became sort of a backlog of a game of I wanted to work on. So it took a little bit longer than I thought it would, though. When it comes to FromSoft, most people will recognize and remember them from games ranging from the Armor Core series, if I'm saying the name correctly, to the Dark Souls and Bloodborne games. Those games were, although fun, they were challenging. They were also very difficult, which is both a good and a bad thing. On one hand, they do offer a really good challenge, but at the same time, they also added a brutal difficulty that kind of turned off some people, though. Sekiro Shadow Die Twice is somewhat kind of like Dark Souls and Bloodborne in a way, but not quite, though. The game I feel is a little bit more forgiving than has been than the Dark Souls series, but that doesn't mean the challenge goes away with it. And although some of the mechanics are a little bit different than from the Dark Souls series, though, taking this different approach isn't necessarily a bad thing, and it adds to excuse me, an interesting experience for this game, to be exact. So why don't we get started with our pros and cons on it, and we'll start with the first one, and that is the pros. We'll start with the first pro, and that is the vibe to the game. Even though the setting is different and so forth, this game has a Dark Souls vibe to it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Dark Souls vibe always has been a little bit dark and gloomy, and has the whole theme around death and so forth. And this game, to some degree, still has that, but while it may not have the vibe that Dark Souls normally has, you still get that vibe out of it, though. I mean, it doesn't follow exactly like the Dark Souls storyline, but you get the sense of, the gloomy, the death, and all that stuff, but in a sort of a samurai or samurai setting and so forth, though. The next thing I want to talk about is the controls and gameplay, and I will say the controls and the gameplay are solid. I like the idea of the prosthetic arm in this game, where you basically can use that and equipped and upgrade it, ranging from using a grappling hook that can be used to hook onto trees, to roofs, to even basically the idea of hooking up an axe, which can be used to knock down wooden shields, to basically something that's similar to a flamethrower, to even basically using one to shoot ninja stars and so forth. It adds an interesting variety to the gameplay, and I like the idea how the game focuses on two things, at least based on my time with it, and that is, of course, the stealth, and of course the parry, though. The stealth, where the game kind of encourages you to sort of find a way to take out the enemies and all without having to engage in combat, but also there are times where you'll have to fight the enemies and so forth. But the combat's kind of interesting because basically the game requires you to time your parries and all that stuff, when it's the right time to dodge, when it's the right time to use one of your techniques. One technique, I think to be exact, is that if you time it right, you can use your foot to step down on an enemy sword when they're trying to thrust, and you could go in for an attack as well. This is something you kind of have to learn in this game, and it does have a bit of a learning curve to it, but it feels very satisfying when you take on an extremely difficult boss. And there are difficult bosses in this game, especially some of them require you to use different techniques. Other ones could be sneak up and you could take out a good chunk of their life bar and so forth. But so there is a little bit of a learning curve to it, but it's in a good way. So to me, the controls and the gameplay in the game are solid and fun. And last but not least, I do want to talk about the difficulty. And I will say, at least for this game, Sekiro Shadow Die Twice, I found the game to be a bit more forgiving than, say, the Dark Souls and the Bloodborne series are. Some of those things range from the fact that you can, if you die, you can resurrect yourself. I think it's usually one time, although there might be more. And basically you could continue where you left off or attack an enemy that may have, knocked you out and so forth. To the fact that you don't have like a stamina meter this time around, where basically every attack, every time you run or anything like that will eat up your stamina meter, and if you eat up too much of it, you'll find yourself out of breath, and you'll find yourself open to an attack or anything like that, and you have to wait for the stamina meter to fill out. I mean, it does replace it with sort of this meter every time you block, or every time you attack an enemy that's blocking. There's a certain bar that fills up, and if it fills up completely, that will leave that enemy open, and you could go in for like an instant kill. Though bear in mind, your enemies can also do this as well, so you got to be very careful with that. But I will say the game is a bit more forgiving than, say, Dark Souls and Bloodborne were. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 2, and that is the cons. And I really only have one con in regards of Sekiro Shadow Dies Twice. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Sekiro Shadow Die Twice for the PlayStation 4, also available on the Xbox One and PC via Steam. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there's really only one con I could really think about, and that is, of course, the difficulty. Now, as I mentioned in the pro part, I talked about how the game was a bit more forgiving than, say, the Dark Souls series or Bloodborne was, and that is still true. The game is, in my opinion, a little bit more forgiving. That said, although it is a bit more forgiving than, say, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, that doesn't mean the game is any easier or anything like that. That Dark Souls difficulty is still there, though, and you have to be very careful when going into this game. This isn't like a hack and slash, like, say, like a Warriors game or anything like that. You gotta really time and know when to strike and when to hit the enemies, to be exact, and sort of learn their patterns, because like Dark Souls, this is a game where you will die a lot, and you will have to learn from your mistakes or have the patience to take on some of these enemies. So it's not a cakewalk or anything like that. Yes, I still think the game is a little bit more forgiving. You don't have like a stamina meter or anything like that. So I will say that's, to some degree, that's a nice thing, especially for those who have a hard time getting into the Dark Souls games. But that doesn't mean this game is any easier, though. It still contains that difficulty that Dark Souls is known for, even though the style and the gameplay is a little bit different. And that might turn some people off, though. But if you have the time and the patience, and you're willing to deal with and you're okay with the Dark Souls type difficulty, then this shouldn't really be a huge con. But just a word of warning for those who haven't tried the game out or anything like that, you will, like Dark Souls and like Bloodborne, you will die a lot in this game. So yes, the game's a little bit more forgiving, but it doesn't mean it's any easier in any way. Overall, Sekiro Shadow Die Twice, I think, is a fun game, though. I like the fact that they go with a sort of a samurai setting of it, though. I like the fact that you still have that Dark Souls vibe, and to some degree, and I forgot to mention this, a bit of a Noel and Onimusha vibe too, and that certainly isn't a bad thing. The controls and the gameplay is still fun, and like I said, the game, I felt, is a little bit more forgiving than, say, Dark Souls and Bloodborne. But as I said in the console, doesn't mean it's any easier, though. It's still going to provide that challenge, though. They didn't dumb it down or anything like that, although some have kind of argued that there should be an easy mode in the Dark Souls. Some people agree with that, some people don't. But it still maintains that difficulty and all that stuff, and you will, like Dark Souls, like Bloodborne before it, you will die a lot in this game, and you will have to learn from those mistakes and learn the enemies' patterns, when to dodge, when to strike, when to parry, when to use some of your special items, especially those on the prosthetic arm and all that stuff. So it still maintains that, but my overall take of it is that I enjoyed Sekiro Shadow Die Twice, and if you like the Dark Souls series or the Bloodborne or been a fan of FromSoft, it's worth picking up, though, for whichever system it is, whether it's a PS4 or Xbox One or PC via Steam. So overall, I would say yes on Sekiro Shadow Die Twice. Give me a thumbs up, though. Okay, this concludes this video review of Sekiro Shadow Die Twice for the PS4, if I'm saying the name correctly. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts of Sekiro Shadow Die Twice? Is this the type of game that interests you in any way? Do you like the fact that the game is a little bit more forgiving but still maintains that Dark Souls difficulty in any way? Would you like to see them do like a sequel at some point down the road? Did you enjoy the game? Did you not enjoy the game? Do you think the difficulty still is a turn-off in any way? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think, and I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it, and I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, and I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!